Hi everyone, my name is Leah Kopke and I'm a 3D motion design freelancer. In each one of these episodes we go over another 3D modeling tool for Cinema 4D, and today's 3D modeling tool is the Spline Pen. So we're going to be going through all of the settings and hotkeys available for the Spline Pen while making these pumpkin cookies. So let's jump into Cinema 4D and show how this works. So here we are inside of Cinema 4D. I'm going to go through all of the settings available for the Spline Pen tool. But first let's go over where you can find it. So you can see that I can find the Spline Pen right over here while I'm in model mode. The options do change as you click on these. You can find it to the left while you're in point mode over here. You can find it to the left when you're in model mode here, because you can use this tool in model mode and point mode. So something to keep in mind. And you can also find the Spline Pen tool up here under the Spline drop-down menu. You can also find it with the command manager. The hotkey for that is also Shift-C, or you can hit this icon here and you can just search for the Spline Pen. And if you want to, you can drag it over here and add it to your user interface if you'd like. For right now, I'm just going to keep it as is, but if you did add it to your user interface, you can save it. So maybe I will actually go ahead and show that. You can hit this plus button here and click Save Layout As, and then save it if you want it to always be there for you. If you click the middle mouse button, you can change to your quadrant views, and you can see our top view, right view, and front view in addition to our perspective view. Now I want to go into the top view to show how this tool works. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and click the middle mouse button here, and that takes me into the top view. And I can activate the Spline Pen tool by clicking on it, and it will turn this purple color. And once I do that, just something to keep in mind is that you can use this with your snaps. So we can activate our snap, enable snap, by clicking right here. And if we click on our modeling settings, we can see our settings for snap. And I have a whole other tutorial that goes way in depth into your snap settings and guides and work planes. So I'll leave that in the description below if you really want to know the nitty-gritty of what you can do with this. But for right now, I just like to have this snap to our work plane, and I'd like to snap to the grid point. So I'll just turn off the grid line option there. We have point enabled, so that's what we're going to be snapping to with our tool. Now that we have that all set up, I can go ahead and just start clicking and dragging, and as soon as I click and drag, you'll see we've created a tangent with some handles here. And then we can go ahead and start making our spline. So I want to make a little bit of a pumpkin shape here. And I'm snapping to the points along here just to make it easier. Now clicking and dragging, we make a tangent. If you want to not have the handles be collinear, what you can do is you can click while holding down Shift, and now we're changing the direction of this so that we now have a point. And I can actually click here and make the stem of our pumpkin. And if I click without dragging, it just makes a point without handles, and it won't have that curvature you see at these other points. So I'll click here holding down Shift, because this one I want to actually have a little bit of curvature to it. And then I can go ahead and click and drag here so that this one is a nice tangent, and I want this to be pretty symmetrical. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical because how many cookies are actually perfectly symmetrical? So I'll go ahead and create another tangent right there, and we're starting to get somewhere here. This is the basics of how to draw with the spline pen. Now you'll notice that if you get done drawing your splines and you realize that you'd like to move a point, all the same controls, move controls, are available for these points. So you have E for move, you have R for rotate. You can still use these with all of your points on your spline. You have T for scale, so you can even scale these handles here. And if you move it, we still have our snap on, so we can just snap over here and have that in place. If you hold down Control, you can actually add a point to your spline. So here I'm holding down Control. Make sure that you have the spline pen still activated while you're doing this. And you'll see this line show up. And you'll only see this line show up if you actually have the spline pen activated. So if you accidentally deactivate that, you won't be seeing this line here. Make sure you're seeing it. And then you can just click while holding Control, Command on Mac. And once you do that, you'll add in a point. Now let's say you want to remove that point. You can again do that while you have the tool activated by hitting Control or Command, and it'll delete that point. I'm going to hit undo here to keep that same curvature. You also have other options here. So if I were to right click on this portion of the spline, you can see we have options to delete this edge. We have options to add a point. So like what we did with Control or Command on Mac, Control on PC, you can add a point here doing that, or you can click this button here and it'll add in a point. You can also split at a split point. So I'll show you what the difference is between this. So I'll add a split point here and I'll hit Escape. Now what you'll notice about the normal point that we added is that it's all connected. If we add in a split point, you'll notice that these 2 points aren't actually connected anymore. That's the difference between just adding your typical point and adding in a split point. So that's just good to be aware of while you're working with this tool. We have other options here. I need to go back into our spline pen and right click on here. We have other options such as delete edge. If you delete this edge, I'll show you what it does. It just deletes it. I'll hit undo, Command Z or Control Z, depending on if you're working on a Mac or a PC. You can have this be a hard edge or a soft edge. So right now, this is actually a soft edge because these 2 points, if I click on them, you'll see that these 2 points have nice tangents on them, and that's making this edge soft. Now, if I wanted to make this a hard edge, it's just going to become linear as such. So now we only have a tangent going that way, we only have a tangent going that way. And that's the difference. We can turn that back to a soft edge and adjust our tangents as needed. I'm going to turn off the grid snap for a little bit up there, and that's easier for me to grab my point. If you are having trouble grabbing your handle, sometimes it helps to turn off the enable snap there just for a moment because it might be throwing off your selection. So that's a quick tip there for you. You have different options when you right click on an edge than when you right click on a point. On a point, you can choose to delete the point. You can choose to disconnect the point. That's the same thing as creating a split point like I had shown earlier. You can create a hard tangent. You can also create soft tangents. So this one's a hard tangent. We can right click and make that a soft tangent. You'll also see these options come up if you hold a click on a point, and that's one way you can do it. Or if you hold a click on an edge, it'll blink and show you those same options there. So now that you know all of these are available, you'll notice that we have actually more options in the attribute manager. So we've been drawing Bezier splines, and that is pretty typical. It has the most options inside of Cinema 4D for drawing splines. But you'll see that we also have other options here. We have the linear spline, and we'll use that to make the eyes here. We have a linear spline, and the linear spline, it has no curvature to it. It just creates linear lines. We also have the cubic spline. I'll come on over here and show you how the cubic spline works. So the cubic spline, when you click, it'll create curvature with also some extra overshoot. So that's the cubic spline, and by overshoot you can see this bulges out a little bit more. Then let's say if we use the Akima spline. See, I just changed that to an Akima spline, and now it doesn't have the overshoot anymore. And you can alternate between these. So cubic, you can see the difference between the overshoot here and the Akima spline. If you hit, let's say we wanted to make a B-spline. I just like to show how this works. So I feel like I used this kind of spline a lot more when I was an industrial designer, and it seems to be a whole lot less common for motion design. You'll probably be usually using a Bezier spline, but the interesting thing about this spline is that you get these control points over here. So these control points control the spline. But you'll also notice that they are not actually on the spline. So that's the difference. If you draw a Bezier spline, like the one we have for this jack-o'-lantern over here, you're going to notice that the points are on the spline. For this type of spline, the points are actually off the spline and they're controlling it. And that is how that works. So we went over linear, cubic, Akima, B-spline, and Bezier. So those are your spline options. We have some more options in here. I'm actually going to go back to our jack-o'-lantern. So we'll go back to our jack-o'-lantern over here, and you'll notice that we have this option called Edit Tangent Mode. Now if we turn this on, and I'm just going to go into Bezier again, if we turn this on, I no longer have the ability to create a new spline. All I can do is click on these points and adjust them. This is just for adjusting points. I'll hit undo, Command Z. The next option here, Lock Tangent Rotation. If you select this, you'll no longer be able to rotate these tangents. You can only adjust their length. I'll hit undo. Now the reverse of that is Lock Tangent Length. And once we do that, we can only adjust their rotation, but we cannot adjust the tangent length. If you hit Create New Splines, that just means instead of continuing to draw more splines within this spline object, you'll create a new spline object when you start drawing another spline. So I'm going to actually hit undo on that. Maybe this will be the mouth. Maybe I'll give this guy a tooth. Here we go. Now I can see better. He'll just have one big tooth and be a jack-o'-lantern. So there we go. Make him a little bit extra smiley. And let's say I accidentally made this rounded when I didn't want it to be. I'm going to hit escape and I'm going to click on this. So you have a few options if you want to make this part no longer curved. If you double click on it, you'll make it a point. And it does much the same thing as if you right clicked on this point and made it a hard tangent. Instead, I just double clicked on it, and if you double click on a hard tangent like this one, you can also make it curved again. So it's a pretty quick fix, and that's the hotkey for that. If you click on the point here, you'll be continuing to draw, and once you see this O symbol, you'll know that you're going to be making a closed loop and it's connecting the spline. So I'll click right there, and now we have that there. Can move this on up. We can go ahead and double click here to make that have a nice tangent. We can use the T hotkey to scale it up to make it a little bit extra smooth. And now we have our lovely pumpkin. I'm going to delete these other splines that we don't really need and rename the ones that we do need. So these are our eyes. This is our pumpkin. So the reason why splines are so helpful for 3D modeling is because you can use them with other tools and generators and things like that to make more geometry. So what we'll do is we'll actually go into our options here. I'm holding a click on the subdivision surface icon, and you'll notice that we have other generators in here. We can grab our extrude generator and we can drop our pumpkin within the hierarchy of the extrude so that now the extrude is working on our pumpkin spline. And I'll come out of here and into our perspective view using the middle mouse button. And you'll see we have an extruded pumpkin, and that is very exciting. You can click on the extrude object and rename it by double clicking. Extrude pumpkin. And now that we've done that, we can also reduce the amount it's extruding. And this is actually rather large. So what I can actually do is I can grab this entire object and we can just scale this in and make it smaller. But maybe we want to also hold down Control and select the mouth and the eyes so that we're scaling all of our splines together as a group. And I'll make this offset 1, and that's the amount it is extruding. So now it's a smaller cookie. We didn't need it to be quite so giant. Actually, this is still rather large. I'll make this 0.25. And I'm just kind of eyeballing the size that I want this cookie to be. So now it's nice and small. And now that we've done that, we can go back and click on our extrude. We chose our offset. You can choose the number of subdivisions. We'll be able to see that if we turn on our lines a little bit easier. We can increase our subdivisions, and honestly, we're going to go over this more in depth later, so I'm just going to skip over all of these settings for now. I'll go over to our caps, and we want this to be round. We're going to increase this roundness right here a little bit. And let's see, that's looking pretty good. And I'm just eyeballing the proportions here again. So now we've got our extruded pumpkin. And you can also do that for the eyes. We'll extrude out the eyes. And now you can see these eyes are extruding out way too much. So we'll take that down quite a bit. Maybe let's try 0.1 and see what that looks like. And we'll add some caps to these as well. Subdivisions 3 is okay. And I may take this back just a little tiny bit. Now let's say I'm pretty happy with this extrude. I can always copy and paste it and instead add the mouth to this one and bring this up right here. So now we're starting to have the basic shape of a cookie. I think what I'll do is I'll increase this and I'll reduce this. So I like this shape more. And we're just tweaking this a little bit. You can tweak your own cookie while you're watching me tweak this one. You can also still go back and edit these splines so they aren't permanently set how they are once you put them inside the extrude. So let's say I'm not liking this point right here and I'm not happy with it. I can go ahead and click the point, and it might be hard for you to see, but that point is selected. And I can go back into my spline pen and I can make this a soft tangent if I'd like to. And now that looks a little bit nicer actually for our cookie. Nicer geometry there. I'll also click on this other point. And this time I'll double click on it and it made it a nice, smooth, soft tangent. So we have options on how we do that. And now we have a pretty happy looking cookie here. And let's say we want to copy and paste this, Command C, Command V. Now I can reduce this offset even more to 0.05 for the copy and bring this up here. And we can use this as frosting, so I might even reduce that further. It needs to be pretty small actually. And I can even take this pumpkin and again use the rectangle selection. I'm holding a click on our selection. I'm going to select all these points. Actually, in point mode, I'm going to select all the points for our spline. And then I can always just scale these in a little bit. So now we have our lovely frosting for our cookie. So what I'll do now is I'll select all of these and I'll use the hotkey Alt-G to place all of these within this null. I'll rename this pumpkin cookie. And now let's texture this. So what I'll first do, I want to do a cartoony style, so I'll go down to classic materials. But first I want to make sure that I have standard turned on. And now we can add in under create classic materials, new sketch material. And if I turn on the interactive render region, you can already begin to see this taking place. I'll put this right here on top of our pumpkin cookie. And if I open up the render settings, you'll see the sketch and tune option here. Now you can adjust the background color if you'd like to. Maybe we'll make it a purple color because I feel like that goes well with Halloween, and the cookie is going to be orange and those colors contrast nicely. Once we do that, we can go ahead and so under render, what you can do is you can reduce your thickness scale. So let's say I reduce it to something quite a bit thinner like that. You'll see that our lines just became a whole lot thinner. Maybe 50% looks good to me. And now it looks like it's much more hand drawn because it has those lines going around it. So it's a really fun, quick way to render. And you can see it's pretty much instantaneous. And it's fun to make something that looks a little bit more 2D. So now that we have this, and we have our thickness scale set to 50%, we can also go ahead and adjust the color. So I'm going to first name this outline, and then I'll go ahead and create some more classic materials. I'll just add in a standard material. We'll double click on this. Inside of our color, we're going to go down to Sketch and Tune, and I'm going to choose to use cell shading for right now. I'll go ahead and rename this frosting, and we can drop our frosting onto our extrude pumpkin. Now, we don't really want our extrude pumpkin to be looking blue. So we're going to double click on this here. I'm going to make this a little bit more of a brownish color so it looks like it got nicely toasted in the oven. And I'll make this a medium brown color. And we'll make this one a more goldeny brown color. I'm doing this pretty quick because I want to just show you how to do this, and you can use your own creativity and make what you want. Actually, I called this frosting, and this is the cookie part. This one's going to be the frosting, this new one that I created. So I copied this by hitting Control, dragging it over, and it created a copy. So now this one's going to be the actual frosting, and I'll put that there. Now the frosting, I'm going to click on this to open it again. So again, I'm in the color channel, click here, and now we're in here. We need this to be orange. A nice pumpkin-y kind of color. So we definitely need this to be more saturated. That's looking better. I feel like this has some potential. I feel like this orange is a little on the dark side. We want this to be a little bit more orangey. Okay, so maybe this here looks good. And now we need to make the eyes. I actually want this to be more saturated. I am probably tweaking this too much. I'm gonna go with that. Okay, so we have that done now. We're going to copy and paste this over again, and we are going to make the eyes and mouth. Now I want these ones, this color, to be a little bit more vibrant, more yellowy. So gonna move this over just a little bit. We're going to increase that saturation. Now we could make this more of a yellow color. I'm going to delete that knot there. These are called knots, by the way. And I'll add this to the eyes and mouth. That's better. I like that this looks quite a bit more saturated. So again, you can make your cookies whatever color you want. Here we go. So I think this is looking like a nice cookie. Now, if you don't want to go through the whole work of modeling a plate, you don't have to, although it's pretty easy to do. If you decided you wanted to make your own custom plate, you can totally do that. But just for the purpose of this, to finish up this tutorial, we're going to go over to the asset browser and we're going to search for a plate. And I found the asset browser, just to show you one more time in case if you didn't see where I clicked, under the window drop-down menu, asset browser. The hotkey for that is Shift F8, but you can also just click on that there and now it's open. We're going to download this dinner plate. So I'll double click on that right there. And now we have this lovely dinner plate here for our cookie to sit on. Now our dinner plate looks far too realistic, so I'm going to delete that material there. Delete that. We want this to have the sketch style applied to it, and we also want to add in another one of these materials. I might actually, just to save time, copy and paste this cookie material, and I'll rename this plate, and we'll adjust the colors accordingly. I'll take down the saturation here. So that there's some nice gray colors. And you can see what that's looking like. It's starting to look a little spooky, which is good. I definitely want these highlights to be brighter. So here we go. We've got a spooky cookie here. And I'll go ahead and close that. Now, no one ever just wants one cookie, so we're clearly going to need to duplicate this. So what I'll need to do is copy this. So I copied it by moving this arrow while holding the control button. That would be Command on Mac. And now I can slide this on over here and rotate it a little bit. And we'll just make some duplicates of it. You could use dynamics to place these cookies. You could also decide to place them using the dynamic place, but I kind of like placing these individually right now. I do have another tutorial if you're interested where I show how the dynamic place looks. I show how to create a basket of French fries for a diner, and that renders quite a bit more realistic than this one here. This one's more of a cartoony style, which, you know, there's no one right style to work in. You get to be experimental and try them all and have fun. And that's really what it's all about. Now, the key here is to not have these cookies overlap in any obvious ways. It's actually easier to make the way they're placed look realistic when they're this cartoony style, because you're less likely to see shadows that look out of place or things that look like they're floating when you're working in this more cartoony style. And that actually in some ways makes placing these cookies here a little bit easier. But it's just something to be aware of. It might take more time if you decide to do some more realistically rendered cookies instead of these cartoony ones. I think one of the fun things about this is just how quickly you can get something that looks fun and cool, because we just used some very, very, very simple 3D modeling tools for this. We used the spline pen. It's actually one of the simpler tools in here, and you could get something that is pretty fun. I might scale this cookie down a little bit to add some variation. Maybe we can move this one up here. Turn this one around. I think there's something meditative about these repetitious parts of 3D modeling that I actually find really relaxing. And again, I did this pretty quick. I'm sure you could tweak this a little bit more than what I did and get something even cooler than what I've done very quickly on my computer for this tutorial. But yeah, I thought this would be a fun project because we're getting close to Halloween and I wanted to cover the spline pen tool anyways. So why not make some pumpkin cookies? You know, it's a good time. So I really enjoyed 3D modeling these cookies with you, and I hope you did too. If you'd like to learn more 3D modeling tools inside of Cinema 4D and be notified the next time I come out with a tool tutorial, and I am going to cover every single 3D modeling tool inside of Cinema 4D. If you'd like to be notified, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Ambient 3D Animations.